Hello, the purpose of this video is to walk through the workout exercise number 14 about data selection and indexing in Python Pandas. So to move on to the code, this exercise pulls data from the World Bank statistical data. It's more specifically about world population over years. So here we're reading from that CSV file, and as you can see here, this snippet shows the 5 first entries in this file as read as a pandas data frame. And you can see that for a couple of countries we have data including the country name, country code, indicator name and code, which is only about population, and also the values of this country's population from 1960 to 2018. So there are two parts of this exercise. One of them is using a series, and the other one is about the data frame itself. So we can think about a Pandas series as one column in the spreadsheet or one column from the data frame. And this is actually what we're doing here. We're pulling one column pertaining to the year 2018 from this data frame. So let's run the code first and pull that series. So once the series is pulled, we can probe into its content by just typing its name, and by default Pandas will shorten the output because it's too long, so this will show just the first 5 and the last 5 entries here. Or we can be more explicit by using the function head, which only select the first 5 entries for us to look at. Right? So we can see that we've got an index, which is the country name, and the value, which is the population of that country in 2018. Okay, so let's move on to the question. This question is asking us about the most populous country. Okay, so what country has most population? So intuitively, this is a question about sorting the data in the series. So we looked at a couple of ways that Python allows us to sort sequences, and those methods are still valid using a series. So we can call a function called sorted and sort the series if we wish using this function here. But then you can see here when the series is sorted, it's sorting in an ascending order for the values in this series. If we scroll to the end, we've got the highest numbers, which are 7 billion, 6 billion, and so on, right? The problem here in this formulation is that we don't know what value belongs to what country. So when you use the function sorted, Python will treat this as an iterable, and the series will iterate over its values. The series also take an optional key, which allows us to sort in a descending order, right? But anyhow, the function here doesn't satisfy our purpose because we are losing kind of a graph of that value. So we can do things manually. We can get the largest value here. We do the sorted and we pull the last value. And we can go to our series and look for the largest value. So this is not the best way to do it. It's just to show that we can do things the way we used to do things by writing loops and going over and kind of sniffing through the series to locate the value. That said, this is not the best way to do things. Okay, so we can do it. So we can write a loop for I in range length of that series, and then we can pull the entry associated with this I. So we can do population 2018.ilocki. That's the value. If E is equals to largest value, then we found I, so we have to print I. And we can also print the index population 2018.index that will give us the index at location I. So if we do this, this will tell us that we found this value actually in location 257, and this is the value for the world, right? So the total world population is 7,500,000,000 people. And this is not very useful because we know that we're looking for a country. I mean, granted, this is the one for the world, but we're looking for a country. And it's just simply doing too much, right? It's treating a series as a list. Or as a dictionary. So there is nothing to be gained from using pandas here. So let's do it using the built-in functions in pandas. If you take a look at our series, population 2018, pandas provide two ways for sorting it. One, sorting by the index, so it will do the sort based on country names, and the other one is sort by the values, which will do the sort using the values. If you look at sort values, and this is what we need here, you can see that this one will take an optional parameter which is ascending, and we want the sort to be descending here. So what we can do, we can sort the value and we can pass the parameter ascending to be false. And here immediately you can see that we've got a bunch of countries here. The top 5 are the world, IDA and IBRD, low and middle income and IBRD only, right? So again, because this data contains not only country data, but also aggregate data, we don't see the countries here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sorted data is this one, and I'm going to select the first 10 to see what we've got in the first 10 entries of this series. So I'm going to do first 10 entry, see what we've got. So that's what we have. And you can see that so far all of these are about aggregate data from different countries, like you can see continent and so on. But we can go deeper. We still don't see any country here. Let's do 25. And I'm expecting China and India to show, and here they are, right? So China is the most populous country. And then immediately afterwards we have India in addition to those aggregate values. So there are some data quality issues in this file. The fact that it lists countries and also aggregate regions in the same place without any indicator is an issue here. So what we want to get here is to use the built-in function sort. And using the built-in function sort, we can pull the data instead of doing it in 2 steps here. So if we want to get the most populous country or the most populous entry, to be more specific here, we can do sorted data 0, and that's exactly what we've got here, right? And because we know that this is the location at 0, we can do sorted data .index 0, and that will be the word. Or if I want to get the whole thing, sorted data from 0 to 1, this will give me a slice, and a slice will be a series rather than a value, and this is why we get here a series that contains one value, which is the word as an index, and the value of the word is the total population, okay? So this is handy because we don't need to leave our kind of comfy world of using pandas. We can use sort values, and then we can take a slice in the beginning. So here is an extension. We're looking for the least 3 populous countries. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the same tactic here. I'm going to sort values, but I'm not going to pass any value for ascending. And this will sort things in an ascending order. And what I want to get here, I want to get from the beginning, a slice from the beginning to the third one, the third entry. And those countries are the least 3 populous countries in 2018. Okay. All right, so let's move on and look at the exercise about the data frame. So remember, the data frame itself is the whole spreadsheet, right? It's the whole thing containing that you can probably pull and open the file by Excel, And you will see a similar organization. By default, Pandas is not going to dump everything on the notebook, so you can see that it only selected the first 5 and the last 5. But there are ways if you want to see everything in the notebook to make that happen. But this is the whole data. And the point in here is that we can select both based on the columns and we can select based on the rows. Well, this advanced exercise is basically asking us to make a selection based on the index. Because this is asking us to select entries of countries with names starting with the letter A. Okay, so I can select some of these countries here, probably the first top 5 or so. Because it seems though that those countries are sorted by the name. So I can do something like this, just relying on the fact that the data is sorted to select the first 5 entries. So I can do iloc, and I can make a guess. Probably there are 10 countries with letter A, maybe. And I want to select all the columns here. So that's my guess. And granted, I got countries with letter A, but there are a couple of issues. One of them is that one of the countries doesn't start with letter A, United Arab Emirates, and probably it's because this country code contains A, but the country name starts with United. And I ended at American Samoa, but I'm not sure if there are more entries, so probably I'll play around with it. Okay, and get the first 15. Okay, so it's not the first 15, it's the first 14, but then excluding United Arab Emirates. So let's be more specific about this process then. Well, I want to sort by country name in order to avoid having some kind of countries that do not start with A. I assume that the data is sorted. It doesn't seem to be the case. Probably it's sorted by country code. And then I can pull the first 14 countries, but probably there is a better way to do things than just kind of a trial and error. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the method sort index here, right? Because the index is the country name and I want to sort by index. Now if I do this, you can see that by default it will provide a new data frame for me that I can operate on. And if I want to pull the first 15 entries here, sorry, from the beginning to 15 entries, you can see that the United Arab Emirates is no longer here because it's now sorted, right? So this whole thing returned the data, a new data frame. I can be more explicit about that, like sorted data, for instance, is equal to this one, and then sorted data with iloc, right? So this one will give me those the countries here, and then probably I want to exclude the one with the Bahamas. Well, so then the only issue here is that I hard-coded number 14. Maybe there is a better way to do it rather than hard-coding it. So we can do it the old way using a loop, just for illustration. But whenever we think about a loop, probably there is a better way to do it. So let's assume I want to begin from the beginning, I0, and I'm going to go over each country name in where the country names are stored. And the country names are stored in sorted data.index because this is the index. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say that if country name starts with, or the first one is 0, because this is a string, right? So is equals to A, maybe I is equal to I plus 1. Else, the moment I hit B, I know for sure that I need to stop, right? So I could leave it without an else, but probably it makes sense to break this loop. So what we've got here is that we stop at number 14. Right, because number 14 is when I hit my B. So then what I need to do, instead of looking I want to do sorted data dot ilock from the beginning to my I, and this will give me the countries that starts with letter A. So that's one way to do it. Let's think about another way to do it. In any kind of these exercises, there are many ways to achieve the same outcome. So what I'm going to think about here, that instead of doing this and doing the loop, let me think about a way to extract the country names that starts with an A. So my strategy is the following. If I know the country names I need to extract, it's easy. I can do lock and use fancy indexing. Let's say, for instance, for the sake of this example, I want to extract data about Armenia and Aruba. I can do this. I can use fancy indexing and just grab a slice from the data frame. Okay. Now the question is, I want not only these two countries, I want all countries that start with letter A. Okay, how do we get that? Pause for a minute and think about it before resuming. Okay, so the country names are all stored in the index. So those are the country names. Would it be possible to filter out this index and only pull the ones that starts with letter A? This is something we've seen before, right? And there are many ways to do it. One of it is using a list comprehension. I can go for each country name in this index, and this will give me the list, right? For country name in data.index, they'll give me a list of countries, right? My condition here is to say, okay, I'm interested if country name starts with, or the first letter is A. And you can see here we got a sublist, a subset from that index using a list comprehension. So that pattern we have seen before and we can apply here. Why? Because this is a list, the data.index, it's not a list, but it's iterable, so we can go over it one by one in a loop or using a list comprehension. So those are the countries, right? And we need to plug those in here, for instance, by copying and pasting them. Okay, and those are the countries that start with letter A. But of course, I mean, we don't need to copy and paste them because this whole list that we passed into the fancy index is basically this expression. So we can store this as countries with A countries, and use fancy indexing with A countries. Okay. Of course, it's fancy because A countries itself is a list. So we can get that here. All right. And this will give us the slice of those countries from the data frame containing letter A, right? So there is no sorting, no guessing where we stop. We just filtered the index and we provided that filtered index to the lock operator, very much like fancy indexing. So the second exercise is very much like the first one, same pattern. Think about a way to filter the index to get countries whose names contain America. And then this list of country names, you pass it, you're using it as using lock and fancy indexing to get the slice from your data. So apply the same patterns here. Again, I suggest you pause here and try to do it on your own before you resume the video. All right, so let's come back here to this again. Data.index is the index, and it contains a list of country names. How do we get the country names that contain America? All right, so same pattern here. Country name. Let's call it country name. Let's call it CN for short now. CN for CN in data.index if America in CN. And since America is lowercase, I'm going to make CN lowercase as well. That will give us the list of the country names that contain America. And again, here you can see that some of them contain America, they're countries, and the other ones are regions, right? So then the rest is easy. We just use this one in combination with log. So we can do data.log, and that's our fancy index, right? That's the double brackets here, recognizing that this one is a list comprehension, and we close. So this one, double bracket, a fancy index, and we get that subset from our data, okay? So in this exercise, we used indexing and selection using brackets and lock and ilog to get data from our series and data frame. In the series exercise, we are interested in the values. So we used sort functions in order to get the top and the least values. Once sorted, we can index it to get the top and the most populous, least populous countries. In the data frame exercise, we are interested in the index. So we can sort based on the index, or we can also process the index to extract a set of entries of some distinguished indices that we can then use in combination of log to get a slice from the data frame.